Well, I think you raised such a good point here. The reality of myself, instead of calling myself a people pleaser, I would like to think of as I just love people, and then and I appreciate humanity. So, and I believe that other people matter. And so when people come into my life, I am going to be loving with them because that's the person who I am. So I think, yeah, I think answer your question a couple back is that I think I do attract people that maybe need a little more added support. Maybe I have a tendency to enable because I am caring and kind. And I went through the whole gamut of, codependency. And I hate that word because it feels, negative and kind of victimhood. But I got into that role because of my situation of loving someone with an addiction. And you know what? I learned so much. And I believe in having a growth mindset amongst challenge, and so that you can struggle well and get through it. And the only way, the only way to the other side is through. And that's what I had to
Hello and welcome to another exclusive interview by Recovery Today Magazine at recoverytodaymagazine.com, where first and foremost, we're a magazine of hope. Whether you're considering addiction recovery for yourself or a loved one, or maybe you're active in recovery a little while or a long, long time, you're going to find all kinds of topics related to addiction recovery and really living a happy, successful, and sober life at Recovery Today. My name is Rob Hanley. I'm the editor-in-chief of Recovery Today. And as usual, I have another guest that I'm super, super, super excited about. She offers positive psychology life coaching services, writing retreats, book coaching services, and unconventional book clubs. She's lovingly called the book doula, and she helps individuals painlessly give birth to books. I love that. She is a positive psychology practitioner, a certified life coach, and a 6-time best-selling author, including her latest, Saving You is Killing Me, Loving Someone with an Addiction. She's the founder of Live Life Happy Publishing and a single resilient mother of 2 children. My guest today is Andrea Seydel. Thanks so much for jumping on.
Oh my gosh. Thanks so much, Rob, for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here, and I'm so honored.
I get excited about like every guest that we're going to interview. So I know it's kind of like the guest of the, like, oh my God, I'm excited. But you and I hit it off the other day when we chatted just to kind of get to know each other. And I so much loved everything that we were talking about. I tell everybody, I have been sober since the spring of 1994. For me, really, staying sober is not really a big deal for me at all. It's kind of just been so long. It's so ingrained in kind of who I am. But the challenge that I have always had and really kind of resonate, and I have a heart for everybody in recovery today and in the community, is co-occurring disorder like anxiety and depression, ADD, things like this. And I've always thought, like, why is it that my natural propensity or my natural thing is like to be unhappy? And I have to really try to be, just feel normal. I feel pretty good right now, but, in general, like, I have to try to figure out. And so I love the whole context of live life happy. That was the first thing that really struck me about what it is that you do, because I'm like, yeah, that's what we're looking for. So I'm so excited about today.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And what's so interesting is that that's the world of happiness, right? We think that, like we strive for happiness, but the reality is that our genes are one thing. We don't have control over our genes, and circumstances like, being born a female or a male, or there's certain circumstances that we don't have that much influence on either. But there is still 40% of intentional behaviors that we do have influence on, and we can influence our levels of happiness. And there's so many resiliency tools and skills and strategies that can help you with your level of subjective well-being and happiness. So it was such a great conversation that we had the other day too, talking all about this, and that we actually, our genetics do show that there is a varying degree of a set point of a level of happiness happiness.
Why?
But
Why is that?
it's in our genes. We
Okay.
don't have control over that. And science has shown that. But at the same time, that there's still 40% left of that pie. There's still
Okay. Well,
40% of things we can do
all
that
right.
can really
I'm going to
influence.
rapid fire questions because I just can't wait to like ask questions and stuff. So 40%, I mean, first of all, like the whole idea, I hate the whole idea, like, well, you're born that way. You got brown eyes, you're short, you're tall, you're this, you're that. I don't like that's how it is. And I get the fact that 40% is 40%, but so for somebody I guess people are naturally born and that they're not utilizing that 40% intentionally, then you're just going to be kind of so happy, or you're Joe that, makes the donuts every day type of a person. You live, without any passion, as Thoreau said, a life of quiet desperation, stuff like that.
Yeah, well, the great news is that actually 40% is
Okay.
huge. Like there is so much influence
All right,
that
that's a
we
lot. That's a lot. All
have.
right, well, so let's kind of start peeling back the onion. I mean, yes, I want to talk about addiction. Yes, I want to talk about sobriety. I want to talk about ADD. I want to talk about all these things. But my real passion is, as we've talked about, we talked about Johann Hari and Rat Park. I was, in terms of like depression and addiction, I think they're all really intertwined. And then we also talked a little bit about that Harvard, I think it was Harvard, I forgot what school it was, that they measured like people that would survey and actually say, I had a freaking great life. Like I had an amazing life. Because I don't think everybody, when they die, I don't think that they all think like I had a great life. I want to.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, we all do, right? And the idea here is that sometimes we think that things that are going to make us happy actually don't end up making us happy. So like going out and buying that new car, it's, it provides us happiness generally, right when we get that new car. But then we have what's called hedonic adaptation, where we adapt and we go back to our baseline of happiness. And so if, then we have to go out and buy something new, right, to bring that level up. So it's actually experiences and human connections and connections with other people that actually bring us true happiness and actually influence us in so many positive ways.
So what's happening? Like my friend, my co-host on Recovery Today podcast, little plug for our new podcast, Mike Diamond. He's really amazing. He's also an author. He's so cool. And he talks about dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. He says, get a dose, get a dose, get a dose. I love that. What do we do then I like to go when we weren't pandemic, I like to go to the gym and work out and get endorphins going, but how can we do some of these other things? If those are the things that make us happy and feel good, how do we do more of that?
Yeah, so it's infusing them in our life. So we have what's called a negativity bias. So our brains are actually wired to notice the negative to keep us safe. And so what happens is that we naturally are wired to notice negative things or harm and to adapt into our environment. However, what we want to do and what we need to do, and in the world of positive psychology, science has shown that if we spend more time and we increase the ratio of more positive emotions, then we will be generally feeling better, and our subjective well-being and happiness will be enhanced. So we can do things, like make a list of all those things that bring you joy. So is it going out into nature? Is it, taking your dog for a walk? Is it, luxuriating in brand new cream, right? And just savoring that moment. So whatever it is that brings you positive emotions, you want to do that obviously more. But then it's also our thinking, our thoughts. What are we putting attention on? What are we sitting in? Are we sitting in, that wet diaper and kind of like complaining about our environment? Or are we moving more into a place where we can notice with gratitude and appreciation, all the beauty that is around us? And it's almost like if you catch yourself going into those places that, from the negativity bias, it's like what you want to do is you want to make the positive emotions more sticky, almost like Velcro, and then make the negative emotions a little bit more like Teflon, where they just slide off. So the idea is to increase that ratio. So you have more positive emotions and you spend more time in that space of positivity. It's not pretending bad things don't happen, but it's, it's spending more time in that place that brings you joy.
What about the person that actually thinks like there's nothing makes me happy? Is it then like, do they take drugs? Like, what do they do? What if they're like thinking, if you were having a conversation and you said, well, what makes you happy? And they said, nothing, like they're just joyless. Is there hope for that kind of person? Like, what do we do with that person?
And you use the word, there is always hope, right? And the reality is sometimes, and I always say this, is that every day may not be good, but there is something good in every day. And the reality is it's just practicing.
I love that.
Isn't it good?
Yeah.
It's practicing noticing the good, or start small, start like journaling maybe 3 good things, or maybe 1 good thing, no matter how small. Like if you search for it, there's what's called a confirmation bias. We will find things to confirm what we're thinking about. So if we think that we're really lucky, then we're going to notice and find evidence that we're lucky. And the same thing is the alternative. If we think bad things happen to us all the time, then we're going to find evidence to support that. So it's really interesting. So the idea is to start small and recognizing that you can search and search for strengths and search for things even within yourself and your environment, that, finding those little things that bring about positive emotion. And I love that you brought up that emotion of hope, because hopefulness is actually that one emotion that's married and kind of knows disappointment, it knows heartache, it knows anger, it knows frustration, knows depression, it knows anxiety. Hope is that one emotion, that positive emotion that can coexist with all those other emotions that help us to get through that.
When we talked the other day and we hit on that word hope, I had said that one of the main things that very intentionally, when we were putting Recovery Today together, and we're like, hey, we're going to do, an addiction sobriety magazine, and it'll be free and it'll be digital and all the things like that. And it was kind of like, well, what is it? Like, how would you describe it? And as I shared with you, and I'm pretty outspoken with everybody, all of our subscribers, the main thing that I have had a challenge with, I've been in a good spot for a good long time. Actually, I had a hard time a little bit last, in the spring last year when the pandemic started, but it was depression, fear, and, anxiety, these kind of things. But when we started Recovery Today many years ago, I was coming from a place of, hopelessness and dark, depression. And I'd experienced it a few times, a couple of times before in my lifetime. It was, I had a normal life till I got really depressed when I was in college, didn't know why. But the part that was interesting to me and thinking about like, well, what is Recovery Today going to be? I like to break everything down. And I realized, well, motivation and discipline and this and that and the other. And I realized that hope is the primary ingredient. Like it's the very first thing. I think it's all succession. You got to have hope. Well, you got to think, well, shoot, I could lose weight. It's possible I could lose weight. Then you have to, from there, then the discipline, then the stuff like that. But if you think like, I'm just screwed, like things will never be better, or they're going to be worse. So that's why we say every piece of content in Recovery Today has to have an uptick of hope, because it's the primary thing we all need. It has to, you can't be hopeless.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I just want to celebrate that is the premise of your magazine. And you really do feel that when you read through your magazine. And I think that is the ingredient. And there actually, Dan Tomasulo, he wrote a book called Learn Hopefulness. And his book is so lovely. And that's what it really is about, is that this idea that hopefulness is like a muscle. We can get better at it. And the more we practice it, the better we get at it. And that it really does help us. But also going back to all those emotions that you're talking about, such as anxiety and depression and, the whole gamut of emotions and ups and downs. And when we're feeling like we're heavy in a dark place, is so essential to honor the fact that you are human. So to have those emotions, to have the ups and downs in life, one of the pieces of self-compassion is giving yourself permission to be human. We can't be happy all the time, jumping around, dancing in fields of flowers, like, butterflies and unicorns. The reality is there are going to be low moments. There are going to be, varying emotions, and that sometimes we just have to honor and have that self-awareness that, sometimes we are going to feel sad, or it makes sense that I'm sad, and then offering yourself some compassion and some support through that. And it won't last. Like those emotions, they won't last. And that there's where that hopefulness comes in.
I realized in my enthusiasm to like just break out and start asking every question I could to you that I skipped over something really important, and that is, who are you? I mean, I read your bio, of course, and yes, you're 6 times, best-selling author, and you've got a cool book. And then when I was looking at your website, I was like, there's like a whole list, certified, every certified. I was like, wow, like certified and everything, but like, who are you? Like, what's your story? How did all of this start? Because already it's breaking out all these nuggets and all these kind of, wait, stop, rewind, it's all these different things. Who are you?
Oh my God. Thank you so much for asking, Rob. Well, I think how we connected is I did end up going through a really tough time with loving someone with an addiction. And I did feel like saving him was killing me. And hence the title of the book, Saving You is Killing Me, loving someone with an addiction. And then so what I did is I always was passionate about well-being and health, and and my top character strength actually is love of learning. So I'm constantly learning and growing. And
were you like trauma family, bad, dad left? Was it something like that? Like, what gravitated you to somebody that you were going to rescue, or that you were going to assumptively that you're going to save in some addict? Like, what about back to like, I grew up in a one-room log cabin type of thing?
Yeah. So I cannot say that I had a terrible childhood. I had such a beautiful, wonderful childhood. I'm so thankful for my parents. They're so loving. And my mom, she probably instilled a lot of really great things, positivity in me. And my dad, he gave me my first book. I was completely obsessed with books. I've always been. The joke was when I was little, it's like, okay, the kids, they all asked to go shopping at different places or do fun things. Andrea asks to go to the bookstore.
I love the bookstore. Love the bookstore. Yeah.
And the libraries, right? I was living at the library. So I think and I love the triumph of the human spirit. And I believe, my story hasn't been all sunshine. I've gone through a lot of trauma. I've gone through, a lot of struggle. And what happened is I've always bounced back, and it's that bounce back factor that, makes you stronger. And that's the whole story of resilience. I believe in following your joy, your passion. So I've always been passionate about well-being and helping other people. I'm a people pleaser. I'm a recovering people pleaser. And so, it's just.
You
like
feel bad when people say bad things. I have described myself as a people pleaser. Sometimes I live in a place, and I'll just say, I kind of throw out some profanity. I just don't give a shit sometimes. So I will say I don't really give a shit. I'm not going to see that person again. I don't care. I don't this, that. I get an ornery kind of moods, but the reality is I like it when people say nice things about me, and I don't really, of course it's a human thing, but like, it's probably a little bit more like, I don't like it when people when people say not nice things. Is that people pleasing?
Well, I think you raised such a good point here. The reality of myself, instead of calling myself a people pleaser, I would like to think of as I just love people. And then, and I appreciate humanity. And I believe that other people matter. And so when people come into my life, I am going to be loving with them because that's the person who I am. So I think to answer your question a couple back is that I think I do attract people that maybe need a little more added support. Maybe I have a tendency to enable because I am caring and kind. And I went through the whole gamut of, codependency. And I hate that word because it feels, negative and kind of victimhood. But I got into that role because of my situation of loving someone with an addiction. And you know what? I learned so much. And I believe in having a growth mindset amongst challenge, and so that you can struggle well and get through it. And the only way, the only way to the other side is through. And that's what I had to do.
So how did you, okay, that kind of that answers a little bit of like the background, log cabin, family, stuff like that. How did you get into, what did you do before you were, Andrea, best-selling author, book doula, and all these things like that, happiness coach? What did you do before that?
Yeah, well, I'm a forever learner because that's my top character strengths. I love to learn. So I went to university. I always taught yoga and fitness classes, and I was married, and so I've kind of been through 2 divorces now. And so, I have to be careful with my limiting belief around men and dating and the whole thing. So, but you know what? I believe everything happens for a reason, and there's so much growth in everything that's gone through. So I guess the person I am is like, I'm fun loving. I like to have joy and seek joy in my life. I let joy be my magnet, and nobody's immune to struggle and challenge. So we've all had our share. And
how did you come up with the idea of like your company is going to be called Live Life Happy? Where did that come from though? That's kind of the central part of like, when I'm asking like, who are you? Like, what's the genesis? Like, how did you get to this spot where, I mean, it looks, and when we were talking the other day, and of course you have ups and downs, but you just look like a happy person, your smile. I mean, how did this whole thing like, yeah, I'm going to call this Live Life Happy. How did that happen?
I think what it is that it was just a tagline, and so some of my friends' parents used to call me Giggles, or so I have a positive disposition, and so I wanted to capture the people that needed support, or that people, like, I wanted to create a tribe that felt very positive, and that I know that word happy, we don't always it's not about running around with fake smiles and being happy all the time, right? But I wanted to capture that, because that is, with all my coaching and my support and all the books that I read, it all has to do with well-being and positive emotions and positivity, and how to also the upside of the dark side, looking at negative emotions and helping yourself through it, and all the tools and resiliency skills that I've learned and the experience that I've been through. I wanted to bring it to people to help them so that they can also flourish in their life, which is the science of, positive psychology is the science of human flourishing.
All right. So I want to jump to this, okay, because I really want to spotlight it and I want to talk about it a lot. It goes in your bio, but you've mentioned now several times reading, and you are a speed reader. So I don't mean like you read fast. Like how many words do you read a minute? I don't know. What's regular people read, and what do you read?
I have no idea. I don't even know.
Come on.
I don't know. I don't know what it is. Let's put it
a different way. We'll put it. How many books a month or whatever do you read then? Because it's like, how many do you read?
I usually read about 3 books a week. I love books. They're so exciting. And my mom actually gave me a book on how to speed read, because we talked about this too in our pre-meeting, is I do have ADHD. And so for me to retain the information, it feels better for me to speed through it so that I can, keep my focus on it and go through it fast. And that's how my brain works. It works better for me to speed read it. And then I take these neat notes and mind maps. And so that's how that all was birthed.
3 books a week. That's like 150 plus books a year. For how long, by the way? How many years? It wasn't last year you started reading 3 books, I'm guessing. How long have you been reading around 3 books a week?
I think, well, my mom, when I was little, she used to put a limit on how many books. I could check it from the library. Yeah. God. So I always loved reading. And then it's funny because even at university, people would say, Andrea, can you read this book for me? And come back and bring me like the quote unquote Cole's notes or the summary. I'm like, sure. I would go and I'd speed read it, make a really like nice mind map for them. So they had the summary. So yeah, that's how the book vault on my website and the, all that, the summaries of the books was birthed.
Well, because I really, really, really want to, spotlight that, because as we're talking, it's like, holy crap, like she knows a lot of things, like that's boom, 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 any kind of thing, how, and also this insatiable desire to learn. I say for my core things, when I really boil down, think it was Darren Hardy. You know Darren Hardy? Darren Hardy's book. He's, you know, a success guy. So he had this thing, and it was all these positive characteristics. There were like 150 of them, and timely and punk, you know, all these different, you know, all of these different would be positive kind of characteristics. And then you had to pick out 50, which isn't that hard, out of like 200, you know, okay, yeah. Then you had to scale it all the way down. You had to scale it all the way down to 3, okay? And mine, I think probably, I'm guessing this is one of the reasons we hit it off so well, is number one, I love to learn. I just love to, it drove my brother nuts one time. He's like, why do you always have to ask why? Like everything you ask is why this? Or what? You get an answer. Well, why that? Why? It's probably good for interviews, I suppose, because, you know, I'm either the guy on the airplane that drives you crazy or that you like a lot. So that's number one. I love to learn. I love to know, like, why are things the way they are? I love the whole idea of consciousness. And can we time travel? And fucking, why am I naturally unhappy? You know, all these kind of things. That's that. Secondly, I like to transfer information. Like if I get something, I have to tell somebody about it. Like, oh my God, that's the second thing. And then I also like, I don't know, I like to make money. I feel good when I have sales and things like that. Probably like anything, you know, it's a, you know, and I like to serve people. There's a lot of other things that are in there, but the 2 of the 3 are learning and transferring. And that's why I call it transferring information. So is that part, I'm guessing?
Yeah, that's amazing. It's so great that you are in touch with your strength. So, and that is a huge part of the whole world of flourishing and positive psychology, is tapping into your strength. And we all have them. We all have character strengths, but we also have values. And so the idea is you want to put these values and these strengths into action. And Martin Seligman, the father of positive psychology, in his book, Authentic Happiness, he talks all about these, you know, your signature strengths and everything.
I'm just laughing and like, oh yeah, that book I read, this nugget I read, that nugget I read. No,
it's amazing. It's amazing learning. So the takeaway I would love your listeners to hear is that everybody has strengths. And the idea is when you know your strengths and you can utilize them, then you're going to feel good. You're going to feel better. You're going to feel happier. And that's all about authentic happiness, is to tap into your strengths. So that's why you love your job, Rob, because you literally are learning, you're sharing, you're knowledge transferring, you're supporting humanity, you're helping people on so many levels with your magazine. Yeah.
I get to get on and have therapy sessions all the time. It's pretty cool.
Yay.
All right. So let's kind of break down a little bit of some other stuff. Like, well, what do we want to talk about? Do we want to talk about depression? Do we want to talk, I want to spotlight really adequately though, your book club. So you have a book club where you know, people, you're reading what's your favorite book? You've read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, and they're all like positive psychology. Or what's some of the favorites? Maybe I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yeah, that's not fair, Rob, because there's so many
10, you know, what's some of your favorites that are out there? How's that?
Yeah. So I think I'm really, really obsessed with any of the books that are relating to positive psychology, and they're backed by science. I'm not as much into, you know, just fluffy books that are like, you know, they walk you through really nice stories. But don't get me wrong, like I love those stories, those books as well. Those ones that kind of just walk you through a story and that have really nice messages in there that can really inspire you. I need the science, Rob. Like I love science. I love when things are backed by scientific research, and then here is an actionable nugget. Here are things that you can apply to your life. And I love books that are obviously structured really well, and then they you know, they have those pieces in it that you can take away to your life. So I cannot narrow it down. Do you see I'm dodging the question?
No, I get it. And I know I looked at your book list and you've got some old classics in there. I love like old time. And I love, who doesn't like Tony Robbins? Like the guy has just been, you know, and he's so modern. And then before him is like Napoleon Hill and Norman Vincent Peale, right? And Andrew Carnegie. I saw things like How to Win Friends and Influence People. I think that is a book that every high school student should read a couple of times. I love that book, just in human relations. What are your thoughts on things like one that pops into my mind for some reason is an old time book called Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. Have you ever heard of it? He talks about
I've heard of this book, and you know what? This may be my next one that I'm highlighting on my book club, because I don't think I've read that book. If I've read it, it was a long time ago. Okay. So you've given me a challenge.
So I'll give you one little nugget, because then you'll go, oh yeah, that's this, that, and the other. in there, he talks about our brains are servo mechanisms. Okay. And then he explains what that is. And at the time I was reading, it's like, oh, that's like a heat seeking missile, that it's the whole, like what you focus on, you get more, where intention goes, energy, energy flows, all of this kind of stuff. That was one thing he talked about. And then he talked about, he was all about science too. He talked about like an insane asylum, which we really don't even have that much anymore. Unfortunately, we need them for all the homeless. But he said that they did this experiment where they told people, essentially, they said, okay, look, we know you're crazy, but pretend that you weren't crazy and then act that way, like you weren't crazy. Like, I know that you're this, that, and the other, but like, if you weren't, how would you behave? And then they did. And then you already know the whole idea is that, emotion and thoughts follow actions, not just actions following what, I don't know. That's just a little, I don't know why I brought up, I'm thinking, I don't want to ask her a book that she hasn't read.
I love that. That is so great. And so that's the whole thing about neuroplasticity, and then how our brains are malleable and changeable. And there's an expression, I cannot remember for the life of me who coined it, but it's neurons that fire together, wire together. So the way you can have this analogy is that the more you practice something, or the more that you think a certain way, the path gets pat down, and it's easier to go down that path. And I kind of use the analogy, my grandpa, I love him. He's passed away now, but he had a farm, and he would always walk the same path to feed the horses. And so he walked this 2 times a day to feed the horses. And so the path got pat down. And so you could see where he would walk, and it was very easy to go on that path, whereas all the grass was growing around. So it's kind of like our neurological pathway. So when we do things over and over again, or we repeat things or practice things, or we think a certain way, we're going to go down the path that's the easiest one to go down, that we've trained. And so neuroplasticity really emphasizes the fact that we can change our pathways, but it takes work. And so you can, if he were to start walking on a different path at first,
love that.
It would be harder to walk on that trail, that's all over. You get the machete out and stuff, right? And it's the same thing with our brains and the idea of neuroplasticity.
Scientifically, right? Like they're actually growing little things and connecting with each other, right?
Exactly. So we have the ability to rewire our brains, and science has confirmed this.
Really, really cool stuff. So some of the things, what are some of the go-to things that you use to either help you with ADHD, or with, adjusting the thermostat on your happiness, thermometer, your meter? What do you do? I can tell you what I do, but you go first.
Yeah, thank you. I think really for me, my biggest thing that I do is I practice self-compassion, because I can be quite hard on myself. And even like I see it in my clients with perfectionism, with writing their books and things like that. And like, I kind of think, I wish I could do more. Like I push myself hard. And so self-compassion is that one thing. And I love Christian Neff's work and her book, Self-Compassion. It is all about recognizing the common humanity, that, give yourself permission to be human. And the reality is that be kind to yourself, just like you would be kind to your daughter or your best friend. Sometimes our inner critic is so mean. And so the idea is the self-compassion is about
why is that?
Because it's meant to keep us safe. So think about it. Think about what the inner critics say. Oh my gosh, Andrea.
It's the opposite though. Like it hurts you, right?
But it does. You're right. So if you think about it and you start befriending your inner critic, it's a really wonderful strategy, because your inner critic is actually protecting you. So for example, say my inner critic is like, Andrea, oh my God, who are you to have an interview with Rob Hanley? Like, who are you, right? It's like, you're going to you better practice, or it's like, so then you talk back to the inner critic. It's like, well, you know what? Actually, he asked me to do an interview. So there must be an alignment here. Like, it's almost like you can have conversations like, thank you for trying to keep me safe and preventing me from.
I've heard that before. Thank you. Go away. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for keeping me safe. Thanks for trying to protect me from not getting embarrassed and making a fool of myself. Because think about it, right? We're wired to we don't want to be ostracized. We don't want to be left out of a group. So that's where that inner critic kind of comes from. So then it's just a matter of thank you, and then have that inner warrior talk to it.
I was telling you a little bit in the pre-interview as we kind of hit it off, like we obviously have here, that in our letter to the editor in the last issue, I told you something that my 97-year-old mom, and I know everybody should love their mom. I think most everybody does. I know there's some, bad experiences and whatnot, but most everybody say, oh, my mom was great. My mom, by anybody's standards, was freaking amazing. I'm telling you, she was great. She lived until she was 97. She was debt free. And so she had all her faculties. She drove a car till she's 96. She had a boyfriend. My father passed away 20 years ago. She had a boyfriend that was 98. They were like high school kids, almost. It was kind of a little, it was a little much. But when she died, we knew that she had only probably a few days. So my brother dictated her obituary with her. Hey, like, let's sit down. And like, that's kind of how it was, like she was not in a hospital room, but it was, she'd had some really, a lot of closer and closer calls. And so one of the things, they wrote all this kind of stuff. And he said, is there something that you would want everybody to know, besides other stuff like that? And she said, yes, I want everybody to know that I liked myself. And so, and actually, so when I was visiting Tucson, where I grew up, I was over at my nephew's house. And for his kids, they have a little room for the pandemic where they're all doing their schoolwork. And there's a mantra on the wall, and it says, I want everyone to know that I like myself with Grandma Aggie, right? And you go, oh God, that's like so great. That's so cool. But then my brain, I start to break it down, like, why did she say that? Of all the things that you could say, and it struck me, she said it to differentiate herself, and knowing most people don't like themselves. I want everyone to know that I liked myself. Why? So that kind of comes back to the whole protection thing and all of that, like, you're a piece of shit, you're this, you're that, you such and such, you such, all these things. And it's like, yeah, go away. Would you let somebody talk to your kid like that? Would you let somebody say your kid is such a, you would tell them, you punch him in the face. You would,
I love that story, and it's so beautiful, and I love the way you tell it, and also the fact that you really did interpret it in a wonderful, beautiful way, and kind of like showing up. Like, it's also, how do you want to show up, and better yet, it's like, how do you want to be in your life? Like, be that person that you actually like, and that you're proud of, and that you want to become, and that you want to be. And it's like showing up every single day. It's like, I like who I am, and I love how you tie that into that self-compassion piece, because that's what it is. It's about being kind to yourself and offering yourself soothing and kindness when you are feeling struggle, when you are feeling, not so great. It's like being your own best friend, but then honoring mindfully that inner critic that's going on, or honoring also the common humanity in it, that, what, nobody is perfect. Nobody has a perfect life. And what, other people are struggling with this as well. And it makes sense that you're struggling with this. And
so if your kid came home and said, upset and said, oh man, so-and-so said this, or you heard it or whatever, the first thing that you would say is, that's not true. That's not true. You're this, you're that, right? You're smart, you're pretty, you're funny, you're a wonderful person. That's not true, right? This is what we should say to ourselves.
Well, yeah. So it's almost like it's like the inner warrior, but then also the compassion piece is like recognizing, like having that inner warrior talk to the inner critic, right? But the compassion piece in the middle is also is about soothing. So as a parent too, you probably go over and rub their back and maybe rub down their arms, going, that must have been really hurtful. I could see how that would hurt you. It makes sense, because that's.
I have a whole little flip book here. Actually, I haven't written in a long time, but I would write down little, there's actually quite a few. And I used to carry it around in my pocket. I would say, imagine the best always, imagine the best case scenario. And I've got a bazillion little things in my little flip chart. So I really am kind of the real thing on this. Like, I'm probably as crazy as you. But one of the things that I say in here that popped into my mind, here's my purpose, and here's my this and my that. One of the things that I had read that I write down, I write these nuggets sometimes. Like I said, I used to carry it around, probably should, but it was self-image. I don't know what book it was. Self-image is not what you think of yourself. It's not what other people think of you. It is what you think other people think of you. So as I had that revelation, I was like, wow, that's true. Like, so then I started thinking, okay, I'm in control because it's what I think other people think of me. Therefore, I can start making up scenarios in my mind of what other people think about me. They think I'm this, they think I'm that, they think I'm the other, because I got to build that self-image up in order to be able to do anything. And I want to live a life that's fulfilled and happy. Like, what, they may not really even, they're probably not thinking about me at all. Right.
You know, it's funny. It's so funny because what's coming up in my brain is that expression, like, it's none of my business what other people think of me. But again, it's all what you're putting your attention on, what you're focusing on, where your thoughts are, because thoughts create feelings, right? And so if you're focusing on that and worrying about it, it's like, yeah. So I love that. I love that you brought that up. And also knowing, I believe instead of focusing on self-image and self-esteem, it's better to focus on self-worth, because that's one step deeper, because nobody can take away the value that you bring this world. So when you tap into what you value and the value that you bring this world, nobody can take that away from you.
What about to the person that thinks that they don't bring any value? Maybe they're actually so depressed that they're thinking, I wish it would just all end. What do you say to that person?
I say find your best friend, find a parent, find someone that you know that knows you well and that believes in you, and find that person and ask them what value you bring or what do they admire about you. Because sometimes we forget, especially when you love someone with an addiction and you're going through the turmoil and sometimes, the gaslighting, manipulating that comes with drug-induced narcissism, you might feel really down and you might feel, tapped out of your resources. So tapping into your self-worth is really essential. So asking those people, getting reminders of, no, you would be an amazing girlfriend. You are an amazing catch. Like, are you kidding? Like, to think that you're not fun, you are like the funnest person ever. It's like, so then it's like reminding you.
And then they're like, really?
So then it's like, but having them even write it down or journal when someone gives you a compliment or like an authentic appreciation and gratitude and of the value that you bring. That's why I never just I try not to just say to someone, wow, that was really good. I give them reasons. I give them explanation. I give them like, you have this amazing ability to and list it out, because that's what people need to recognize wow, I really do bring value, and that value, nobody can take it away from you. So no matter what anyone says or does in your environment, when you know your value and you keep reminding yourself of your value, it's really important.
How about the power of what you speak out of your own mouth? Yeah. What about that? What are your, there's a biblical verse that says you're snared by the words of your mouth, and people will say, I'm screwed. This always happens to me. I'm never, these kind of things. But there's a psychology thing of a thought reaps a word reaps an action reaps a habit reaps a character, which reaps a destiny. But the words that you speak, we hear these. What do they do into our own psychology in terms of like, all of this kind of stuff?
So good. Well, first of all, those things, the words that we speak are coming from thoughts, right? And sometimes repetitive thoughts become, ingrained beliefs. And so the more you repeat your thoughts and you're saying things, you are reinforcing those beliefs. And so those limiting beliefs can hold you back, and they become almost like truth, like you believe them as true, right? If you're constantly saying, whatever you're repeating over and over again, if it is something that's, not favorable, you're going to create that neurological pathway that we just talked about, and you're going to create it. And you're going to go down that road easier, that path easier and easier. And so you don't want that. And because thoughts become emotions. So if that thought thought, it doesn't make you feel good. And then it actually makes you act in a way that reinforces that. So it's like a downward spiral. But the good news is you can go in the other direction. You can create an upward spiral that broadens you and challenge those limiting beliefs. So that's why you want to listen to what you're saying and catch yourself like, wow, where did that come from? And sometimes I'll hear my daughters say like, oh my God, I look so ugly. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like delete, cancel, cancel.
Exactly.
Yeah, delete, cancel, cancel. It's like, what's a better feeling thought? And so I almost like that is ingrained in myself. It's like I catch myself if I'm going, we all have them. We're not immune. A lot of us have the limiting beliefs, or sometimes we go down that we've got the negativity bias. So our brains will do that. So the idea is to catch it. And this is all that piece of self-awareness and mindfulness. It's like recognizing, and in positive psychology, it's called metacognition. It's thinking about your thinking. And so you're like, oh my gosh, like that. Okay, so what would a better feeling thought be, right? And then you're creating a new pathway. It's like, okay, a better feeling thought is this. It's almost like you got to catch yourself saying it.
So like in your daughter's case, I don't know whether she really said that or not. It's probably not uncommon, but what would you tell? So you say, oh, like seriously, first of all, you're going to just say, cancel that all out. And then you're going to substitute something in, and you're going to say, no, like, look at it this. So what would you say? Not necessarily your daughter, but just an example, or maybe what did you say?
Well, first of all, recognizing that is a voice that's speaking. And so I usually say to her, like, there's the inner critic, right? And so I'll say to her, like, whoa, Mean Mary's coming out. Like, so we recognize it. It's a mean voice. Like
it's not you. It's not you.
It's a thought.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's, so that's one way to attack it. It's almost like give it a name, recognize it. Metacognition is just thinking about your thinking and catching it. So these are these things that we say over and over again, like, oh, I'm trying to think of one right now. Someone said it the other day. You've heard them all. Money doesn't grow on trees, or you got to work hard to make money, or I'm trying to think of some now. Oh, everything's getting so expensive. That was the one. Everything's so expensive now. That's a thought, right? And that thought actually doesn't make you feel good. It makes you feel overwhelmed. It makes you feel nervous. And what does it do? What action does it make? It makes you feel like you need to work harder, and it makes you go into a place of scarcity, and it actually can cause stress and overwhelm. So a better feeling thought would be like, the other one that came out the other day for me too is like, there's not enough time in a day. That's a limiting belief.
I say that. Yeah.
So then you need to so what would a better feeling thought be? Because when you say there's not enough time in a day, the emotion that you feel is stress and overwhelm or fear or whatever comes up. And then the action is that you feel frazzled, and maybe you get paralyzed because you feel overwhelmed. You got too much to do. So you want to reverse engineer that and go, and what's a better feeling thought? So a better feeling thought might be, I make maximum use of my day. I get so much done in a day, right? Because you do, like you probably do, right? The flip side of that is that, yeah, there's not enough hours in a day because I'm doing so much, but like I have amazing opportunities of things to do. So that was how I reverse engineered that one. It's like, and I even put it on my slate board. It's like, I make maximum use of the hours in my day.
As we start to kind of bring in for a landing a little bit, I did want to talk a little bit about what we vibed on a little bit about ADD, ADHD, and it being a superpower. What are your thoughts on that?
100%. If you can reframe, I always say if you have something, or you you're presented with something, you can reframe it. You can. So what it is it can either be a grievance story. We can make it so that it's a story that, is not so great, and we become the victim sometimes, or we can reframe the story and make it so that we're actually a hero. And so that's actually in my book too. So sometimes it's like you want to shift the lens to a place in a different perspective. If you can shift from that grievance story of, feeling, bad for yourself, or like in the victim mode, or like, it's like, not so great. Like I could say like, oh yeah, I have ADHD. Oh my gosh. I forget things all the time.
It's a deficit.
It's a
It's something I need to
deficit.
overcome, right?
Yeah. And then it's like, I have to figure this out. Oh my gosh, you better put me on an IEP, or like, like the story could go on, right? And it's a label. So I flipped the lens on that, because if you can look at it from another perspective, yes, it could be terrible. And sometimes I'll have conversations, I'll have no idea where the conversation just went. And I'm like going, what were we just talking about? Because we went off. So the idea is that it could be that way. And some people could see it as like scattered, or like, annoying.
I think that it actually is legit to focus and to be disciplined to do one thing. In my mind, I am constantly thinking, like, my brain works so fast and seeing different things. I'm like, oh, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do the other. And I enjoy doing a lot. I enjoy doing several things, it seems like, at once, or like a website's loading or whatever. It's like, I don't got time for that. I'll check in the meantime. It's always like, in the meantime, I can do this. I like the whole idea, although I don't do it. My wife does it, like that the washing machine is cleaning the clothes while I'm doing something else. Like there's something else in process of doing it. But I'm constantly having to tell myself, okay, like, either stop. We're only going to do this right now. I'm not going to respond to a text, not going to check an email. I am going to start this and I'm going to finish this. What are your thoughts about completing things and then moving to the next thing and moving to the next thing and moving to the next thing?
Yeah. Well, a couple of thoughts on that. First of all, I love that you are able to see ADHD it through the lens of a superpower. So it's all it's like whatever glasses you put on, whatever lens you're looking through is how you're going to see it. So for me is I switched the lens of my ADHD to a superpower. I can speed read books. It forces me, I have to be moving my body. I can't sit for long. So it keeps my body in shape. So I have to exercise. I also have to do yoga in order to quiet this monkey busy
Yes.
mind of
I got to
mine.
start doing yoga. I think I got to start. I keep
Yes.
thinking, I got to do yoga. I got to do yoga. I got to do yoga so that I'm time blocking something out.
Rob, guess what? You have to do yoga. So mindfulness, so you get better at other things. Like there is a gift hidden within it. You just have to look for it. It's like that expression, right? If there's a room, so there's these two kids. I hope I can say this story properly, but there's these two kids, right? Or there's two rooms. And so, no, there's one room. These two kids go into the room, and there's SHIT all over the room.
You can say it. You can say it.
There's shit all over the room. And this one little boy is like, oh my God, get me the heck out of here. It stinks. This is disgusting. Like, why are we here? And he just gets out, right? And the other boy goes, oh my gosh, there's got to be a horse in here somewhere. And he's searching all around, right? So the idea is that, whatever lens you put on it, that's what you're going to look for. That's what you're going to attract. That's what you're going to see. And that's going to be your reality. And so it's so profound, right? If you can see things from a superpower. And then what was your other question?
I forgot.
Oh yeah, me too. There's our ADHD.
I don't remember. It was like, that was a minute or two ago. It's gone.
I jotted it down because I didn't want to forget, but then I can't read my own writing. So
I told me I need to do yoga and
superpowers.
One thing.
Oh, multitasking.
Multitasking. Yes, and finishing things.
Yes. So for our ADHD brains, it's really important for us to recognize that we can start something and then move on to another and forget what we were doing. So it's the whole premise of, if I were to ask you to say the alphabet, you would be able to go A, B, C, D, E, F, G and do the alphabet. If I asked you to count from 1 to 10, you could count from 1 to 10. But if I asked you to put those two things together and alternate, it would be a harder task. So, and this is for everyone. It's not just for the ADHD brain. So the idea is that it's harder to focus when you're doing multiple things. So science has confirmed that it's actually better to focus and do one thing at a time.
Really, really cool. What is kind of the final question before we put the wheels down? Of all the stuff that you coach on, you read all of these kind of books, what vein? Well, two questions actually, because I remember the one I was going to ask before I started talking. Okay. I believe, what is your experience, that most people that are suffering addiction, whether it be substance abuse, non-substance abuse. I believe that that ADD, ADHD, depression, and anxiety are, I think it's so intertwined, it almost always exists, because I'm aware now, like, we're an addiction, recovery, sobriety, mental health magazine. We've really not talked at all about addiction. But I kind of think that we have a little bit, because my purpose is I want to connect with everybody that they're saying, yeah, like that's me too. Am I right about that from your experience? Because I think that most people, in fact, I almost think that addiction is a byproduct of how our brains are wired. What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I am not an expert on addiction per se.
Just from observation.
I loved someone with an addiction, and my skill set, my experience, as well as my knowledge, is all about taking back your power when you love someone with an addiction. But I've seen it firsthand, and I can honestly say that I think a lot of the elements of it is the fact that I think that they're numbing. It's a form of numbing, and that can be like even people who, they want to numb an emotion that they don't necessarily know how to experience. And so, for example, it could be like, some people go shopping, like when they want to numb a feeling of inadequacy or not feeling, 100%, because they want that dopamine hit, right, to make themselves feel better. So I think there's a lot of chemical imbalance that influences why people might go in numb emotion.
This is my last question. Is that your favorite topic to talk about? Because I'm also aware, I'm thinking like, did we talk about everything that I wanted to talk about? Or like, did I give it an opportunity to like have you talk about like what's your, because so many things, like what's some of the things? Is it love addiction? Is it empathizing with people that are, as your book is, loving somebody with an addiction? What is it that really is the bullseye for you?
The bullseye is that I went through so much turmoil loving someone with an addiction, and I had all these science skills, the resiliency tools and everything, and it was so hard. So I vouched that I will not let my struggle go to waste. And I wanted to make sure that I created a resource for people with the podcast, the book, in order to really support the people that do love someone with an addiction, because a lot of the focus is on the addict in their lives. And it is a big struggle when you do love someone with an addiction. So, and resiliency skills is what got me through. And also I felt very alone. So I didn't want, and I don't want anyone to feel that they're alone in the chaos of loving someone with an addiction. So I knew that there was a little bit of a missing piece. And I wanted to make sure that I could help people take back their power, not just take back their power, tap back into their power. And then, so my passion, to answer your question, is resiliency skills. All this science-backed skills and evidence-based research that supports human flourishing.
What's so cool is that I think that actually is kind of the essence of like my first question when I was like, who are you? I think that actually really answers it. So for somebody who's thinking, yeah, like I need resilience, or, I'm in that same thing, or that's me, or they vibe with anything else that we're talking about, obviously, how do they get back? You've got a podcast, you've got a whole bunch of different books and things like that. How do they get back in touch with you? Because, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that. Everything's on my website at andreaseydel.com. And all my books are on Amazon, and my podcast is the same name as my book.
So I want to make sure I spell it all out. So it's Andrea, A-D-R-E-A, oh God. Andrea Seydel, SEYDEL.com. Is that right? We'll put it up on here. We'll put it all in the feature and everything like that. And then the podcast is called?
Yeah, the podcast, I have two podcasts. The one is Live Life Happy, and that's where I highlight and summarize books. And I have author visits and stuff on the podcast. But then I also have the Saving You is Killing Me, Loving Someone with an Addiction podcast too.
Really cool. We're going to do more. That's so cool. My belief is that obviously we've attracted people into our following that are, we've shaped this kind of ethos. So I love this. I think this is really awesome and full of hope. And I just appreciate you jumping on. And it was like a fire hose. I purposely want to kind of slow myself down from because that's how I really feel. But thanks for jumping on. This was really, really insightful and really cool. And I completely enjoyed it. I'm sure whoever's watching it will also.
And thank you so much for having me and inviting me on and letting me be a part of your community and for everything that you do as well.
My absolute pleasure. Well, this has been another fun fire hose-ish interview with Recovery Today magazine. Andrea Seydel, AndreaSeydel.com, and her podcasts, plural, and books and all the things like that. So thank you so much. And this is a wrap.
Yay.